Why would the Empire annihilate an ancient holy city devoted to peace? A single flash of light, brighter than the twin moons of Jedha, marked the end of a civilization older than the Jedi Order itself. The holy city, once a place of serene pilgrimage and spiritual learning, was reduced to molten ash in moments. But why? Why would the Empire unleash its wrath upon a seemingly insignificant moon? A backwater world with no major fleet, no known military presence, and no political sway in the Senate. The answer lies not in what Jedha had in the present, but what it had represented in the past. This is the tragic past of Jedha, a planet once known as the Kyber Heart, a cradle of Force devotion and a symbol of resistance against tyranny, and it all began long before the Jedi ever set foot on it. Before we speak of destruction, we must first understand reverence. Long ago, even before the rise of the Republic, Jedha stood as one of the oldest known locations where beings across the galaxy gathered to worship the Force. While Coruscant may have been the political capital, Jedha was a spiritual beacon, believed by many to be one of the very first places where the Force touched the galaxy. But what made Jedha so sacred? The answer may lie in its deep subterranean vaults of Kyber crystals, those rare, Force-attuned minerals that served as the heart of every Jedi lightsaber. These crystals weren't just valuable resources, they were living conduits of the Force. So, what made Jedha different from other Force-attuned worlds like Ilum or Ahch-To? It was pluralism. Unlike the Jedi, who interpreted the Force through a specific doctrine, Jedha became a home for many Force-worshipping sects. As thousands made pilgrimage to Jedha, a mosaic of Force-based traditions blossomed across its dusty streets. From the disciples of the Whills, who recorded the mysteries of the Force in sacred texts, to the enigmatic guardians of the Whills, protectors of the Temple of Kyber who wielded no lightsabers, but believed deeply in the Force's will. The city teemed with spiritual devotion. Shurat Imwe and Baze Malbus, who would later play vital roles in the rebellion, were among the last of these guardians. The diversity of beliefs didn't lead to conflict, it led to harmony. Jedha was a rare nexus where different Force philosophies coexisted in peace. But with Kyber came danger. Could this spiritual jewel truly remain untouched by the ambitions of war? That answer came during the Clone Wars. While Jedha tried to remain neutral, the growing violence of the Clone Wars couldn't be ignored. As Republic and Separatist battles grew bloodier across the galaxy, the importance of Kyber crystals drew more eyes to the planet. Jedha's Kyber mines became a subject of intense interest, especially for the Republic's Jedi Order. Although the Jedi did not rule Jedha, they were frequently present, observing, meditating, and in some cases, recruiting potential Force sensitives from the many sects who lived there. But as the Republic morphed into the Empire, that interest turned from reverence to exploitation. So what did the Empire really want from Jedha? When the Empire rose, they came not as pilgrims, but as conquerors, claiming to preserve order. Imperial forces swiftly occupied Jedha under the authority of Governor Tarkin and later Director Krennic. Stormtroopers marched through sacred temples and heavy equipment tore through ancient bedrock. But what were they really digging for? The answer, we now know, was Kyber. Vast quantities of crystal were being extracted in secret and funneled directly to the construction of the Empire's ultimate weapon, the Death Star. To the people of Jedha, this desecration wasn't just about resources. It was about the erasure of their fate. Resistance simmered under the surface, and extremist groups like Saw Gerrera's partisans began striking back. Which begs the question, was Jedha's fate sealed not just because of its crystals, but because of its spirit of rebellion. Saw Gerrera's partisans were not like the mainstream Rebel Alliance. They were radical, violent, and willing to sacrifice anything to strike at the Empire. From his hidden base, carved into the moon's rocky cliffs, Saw launched bombings, ambushes, and raids against Imperial convoys, right in the heart of the Holy City. The Empire responded with brutal crackdowns, executing suspected collaborators and enforcing strict martial law, but nothing could stop the underground resistance from growing. When Jyn Erso was brought to Jedha by Cassian Andor, she witnessed firsthand the fractured resistance and her father's message. The Death Star was near completion, and Jedha was its proving ground. But how does one test a superweapon without revealing its full power? The answer was horrifying. With Tarkin and Krennic locked in a power struggle over control of the Death Star, Krennic made a chilling choice. Fire a single reactor blast from the Death Star on Jedha City. Not enough to destroy the moon, but enough to make a point. In an instant, centuries of history, religion, and culture were annihilated. The towering temple of Kyber was vaporized. Sacred texts lost. Millions of pilgrims, priests, and citizens obliterated in the blink of an eye. Chirrut and Baze narrowly escaped. Jyn and Cassian barely outran the blast. But for Jedha, the damage was done. The moon's surface cracked. The once glowing heart of Force devotion was turned into a crater of smoke and dust. But what happened after? Was that the end of Jedha's story? Even after the destruction of the Holy City, Jedha would not die. The moon's atmosphere was irreparably damaged, creating permanent storms and unbreathable zones. But survivors remained. The ruins of the Holy City became a rallying cry for Force believers and rebels alike. The partisans, though weakened, continued fighting in the shadows. Pilgrims still came, fewer now and more cautiously, but they still came. Some believed Jedha had become even more sacred in its suffering. During the reign of the First Order, maps still marked Jedha as a dead world, but legends whispered that its Force energy had intensified, that the destruction had created a wound in the Force that some Seekers tried to reach. So was Jedha's tragedy truly the end, or just a transformation? Jedha may have been broken, its people scattered, its temples destroyed, but its spirit endured, in the Guardians of the Whills, in the Kyber crystals hidden across the galaxy, in the rebellion it helped ignite, and in the memory of those who still believe in the Force. Because the Force is not confined to buildings or borders, it lives in fate, it lives in sacrifice, it lives in hope, and hope, like the Force, can never be fully destroyed. But what do you think? Did you know of the many Force cults on Jedha? Let me know your thoughts in the comments below, and as always, like, subscribe, and join us next week for another deep dive into the archives. Thanks for watching.